Dockmaster Zill was halfway through laughing at the humans when the old warship's lights flickered on, not the polite glow of modern vessels, but the cold, hungry eyes of a predator waking up. 5 minutes earlier, no one in the crowded berth had taken the arrivals seriously. Captain Grant Mercer stepped off the shuttle in a scuffed flight jacket, coffee in hand, with his teenage son Eli trudging behind him. Both wore the relaxed expressions of people here to pick up a second-hand commuter ship, not a derelict Centurion-class battleship that had been bolted to Dock 9 for over a century. The dock was alive with murmurs in at least 7 languages. Most of them carried the same tone: mockery. "Humans really bought that?" hissed an avian crewman to his friend. "Not bought, inherited," his friend corrected, snickering. "From a museum, I hear." Grant ignored them. Eli didn't. "They're talking about us," he muttered. Grant took a sip of coffee. "Good. Means they've noticed." Dockmaster Zill, a chitin-plated insectoid with far too many teeth for someone in customer service, scuttled forward. "Captain Mercer," he said with a tone of exaggerated welcome, "you've come for the Antaris? I must warn you, this relic has personality." His mandibles clicked. Mostly in the form of leaking atmosphere and questionable structural integrity. Grant smiled pleasantly. Leaking atmosphere builds character. Eli gave his father a look. "You're joking, right?" "Mostly," Grant said, already walking toward the gangway. The Antares loomed ahead, a dark silhouette against the docking lights. She was ugly in the way a well-used hammer is ugly. No grace, all menace. The hull plating was a patchwork of different alloys, each one a scar from a battle older than most species present. Corotal, a scaled reptilian trader leaning on a crate of fruit, called out as they passed. "Careful. Human. That ship's last captain never came back." Grant gave him a polite nod. Maybe they didn't want to leave. Inside, the air smelled faintly metallic, tinged with dust. Lighting strips sputtered to life one by one, throwing long shadows down the corridors. "Great," Eli said, stepping over a discarded tool case. "Haunted and rusty. You really know how to pick 'em, Dad." Grant ran his hand along the bulkhead. "Rusty can be fixed. Haunted means it remembers." They moved deeper, their footsteps echoing in the empty ship. The bridge was a half-circle of consoles and display banks, most dark. At the center sat the captain's chair, simple, utilitarian, with a faint groove worn into the armrest where someone had rested their hand for years. "Dad," Eli asked, "why this ship? You could have gotten something newer, faster." "And predictable," Grant finished. "No fun in that." He sat in the captain's chair and pressed a recessed switch. A hum rolled through the deck plates, low and deep, like the first note of a song. Outside, in the dock, conversations faltered. Lights along the Antares' spine flared, crimson and gold, then steadied into a steady burn. Somewhere deep in her hull, ancient engines began spinning up, slow at first, then with gathering confidence. Dockmaster Zill's mandibles stopped clicking. "That shouldn't be possible. The power cells are dead." On the bridge, a voice spoke, not synthetic and clean like modern AIs, but resonant, with a faint edge of human cadence. "Welcome back, Commander. Targets identified." Eli froze. Targets. Standard wake protocol," Grant said lightly. "Nothing to worry about unless you're planning to shoot at us." The dockside audience wasn't reassured. Through the bridge viewport, Grant could see aliens backing away from the hull. Some simply stared. A few made hurried calls. Eli dropped into the chair beside him. "You're way too calm about this." Grant kept his eyes on the control display. "Calm's cheaper than panic. Now, let's see if the old girl remembers how to talk to the docks." He tapped a sequence into the console. The Antares' external speakers crackled. "Dock 9, this vessel requests immediate clearance for systems check." Zill's voice came back over comms, tight with unease. Clearance granted. Do not, under any circumstances, activate weapon systems. Understood, Grant said pleasantly, then muted the channel. To Eli he added, we'll activate them later. Eli blinked. Later. Grant leaned back. Son, never show all your cards at once. Especially when everyone thinks you're holding a bad hand. They spent the next hour running diagnostics. Every subsystem reported in, one after another, with unnerving efficiency. Shield generators that should have been offline for decades purred to life. Engines warmed without complaint. Even the crew quarters powered up, as if waiting for occupants who'd only stepped out for a moment. From the dock came a steady stream of eyes. Aliens leaned over railings, peeked through maintenance hatches, and whispered furiously among themselves. A few took discreet holo-recordings. You think they're still laughing? Eli asked. Grant smirked. Only the ones who aren't thinking. By the time the last system check cycled green, Doc 9 had fallen into a strange silence. Not quite fear, not quite awe, but somewhere in between. Grant stood. All right, Eli. Let's lock her down for the night. As they made their way back through the dim corridors, Eli glanced over his shoulder. Feels like it's watching us. Grant's voice was mild. That's because it is. Back on the gangway, Zill tried to sound casual. You intend to take her out soon? Grant adjusted his jacket. Tomorrow, maybe. Need to stretch her legs. Corital appeared again, eyes narrowed. And if she bites? Grant's smile didn't reach his eyes. Then we'll bite back harder. They walked toward the shuttle that would take them to their quarters on the station. Behind them, the Antaris sat in Dock 9, lit from within, a sleeping beast that had just shifted in its slumber, enough to make the jungle go quiet. Eli glanced at his father. You planned this, didn't you? Grant took a long sip of coffee. Son, in this galaxy, you never walk into the lion's den unless you're the bigger lion. Morning in Dock 9 came with a faint vibration through the deck plates, the old warship's heartbeat still running from last night's power-up. Eli stepped off the shuttle yawning, still holding a protein bar, and stopped mid-bite. Dad, there's more people here. He wasn't wrong. Yesterday's handful of curious dockhands had become a crowd. Traders leaned on crates, mercenaries pretended to check weapons, and uniformed officials stood in tight clusters. Everyone was watching the Antaris. Grant didn't break stride. Attention's good. Means the bait's working. Eli frowned. What bait? The kind you don't explain until after the hook's in. They boarded through the same gangway, the smell of metal sharper today. The ship greeted them with a steady, low hum, as if aware of their arrival. On the bridge, the consoles lit automatically. Good morning, Commander. All systems nominal. Awaiting orders. Eli sat at a secondary console. It still calls you, Commander. You sure that's not creepy? Grant adjusted a display. It's respectful. Creepy is when it knows your name before you introduce yourself. They began the day's inspection, starting with engineering. Half the room looked like a museum exhibit. Heavy pistons, layered armor, coolant pipes thicker than Eli's torso. The other half was inexplicably pristine, as if built yesterday. Dad, there's no dust in here. Grant nodded. Self-cleaning nanites. Old military standard. Means it's been awake longer than the doc thought. A voice echoed from the doorway. Impressive, isn't it? They turned to find Corital leaning casually against the bulkhead. Station security doesn't like strangers wandering into their ships, Grant said mildly. I'm not a stranger, Corital replied, walking in uninvited. I traded with the Antaris' last supply officer. Back before. Well, you know. His eyes scanned the consoles. It was never supposed to run again. Eli crossed his arms. Yet here we are. Corital's frills twitched. Maybe annoyance, maybe respect. You should know, when a Centurion class wakes up, so do its enemies. Grant met his gaze evenly. Then they'll get the same welcome you got, polite at first. Koratau left without another word. They moved on to crew quarters. Most were empty shells, bunks stripped, lockers open. But in one sealed cabin, the lock light blinked green at Grant's touch. Inside, everything was intact. Bed made, desk neat, a mug still resting beside an old datapad. Eli stepped inside slowly. Feels like someone could walk back in any second. That's the point, Grant said. As they continued, the AI spoke again. Commander, an external vessel is maintaining an unusual trajectory near Dock 9. Shall I initiate countermeasures? Grant didn't answer immediately. He led Eli to the bridge before replying. Show me. A holomap displayed a faint red blip just outside the station's declared perimeter. Cloaked? Grant asked. Emission masking only. Probability of reconnaissance. 92%. Grant looked at Eli. Lesson time. What do you do when someone's trying to peek in your window? Eli thought. Close the blinds. Grant smiled faintly. Or turn on the floodlights. He keyed a command. Outside, the Antaris' dorsal array rotated, projecting a beam of coherent light so powerful it lit the distant blip in stark relief. The hidden ship, now very visible, made a sharp turn and fled. The comm channel crackled. Dockmaster Zill's voice was tight. Captain Mercer, please refrain from aggressive sensor sweeps. Just checking the weather, Grant replied cheerfully. Eli leaned back. You did that on purpose. Of course. Spies hate daylight. Later, over lunch in the mess hall, Eli noticed more of the station's officials outside the viewport. Some wore military colors from factions that had fought humans before. None looked friendly. They're scared, Eli said. Grant finished his coffee. Good. Fear's honest. The afternoon was spent testing internal systems. Weapons remained offline, for now, but shields and propulsion responded with perfect precision. The AI seemed almost eager. Commander, primary magazines are at 74% capacity. Recommend resupply. Not yet, Grant said. We're still making friends. By evening, word had spread beyond Dock 9. Strangers from other parts of the station wandered in under flimsy excuses. Lost, just looking, delivering parts. All left quickly once they saw the Antaris' interior. On the way out, Eli asked, Why let them snoop? Grant's tone was calm. Because they'll report back. And every story makes the monster a little bigger. They stepped off the gangway, past a fresh cluster of gawkers. Zill intercepted them. Captain, there have been inquiries. Some parties want assurances you won't take the Antares beyond safe operating limits. Grant kept walking. Tell them she's perfectly safe. He didn't add, for us. Koratau's voice called after them. And if she isn't? Grant didn't turn around. Then you'll find out who isn't. That night, the station was buzzing. In a dozen bars, the story was already changing. The humans hadn't just powered up a relic, they'd reactivated a legend. And somewhere in the dark, more ships began to move. By the third morning, Dock 9 felt like a theater before curtain call. The usual shuffle of dockhands had been replaced with uniformed guards at the periphery, their hands close to their sidearms. A few wore the insignia of fleets that had once traded fire with humans. Eli stepped out of the shuttle and muttered, This is getting crowded. Grant scanned the docks without breaking stride. Crowded means they're worried. Worry makes people predictable. Inside the Antares, the AI was already awake. Commander, multiple vessels have entered holding patterns within visual range. Suggest tactical readiness. Not yet, Grant said, easing into the captain's chair. We'll let them think they're in control for a while longer. Before Eli could ask what that meant, the bridge hatch slid open and Dockmaster Zill scuttled in, antennae twitching nervously. Behind him came a tall, sleek avian in ceremonial robes, Ambassador Jinxa, the diplomat for the Crenari League. Jinx's voice was smooth, every word dipped in condescension. Captain Mercer, your enthusiasm for reviving obsolete weapons platforms has attracted the wrong kind of attention. Grant gestured to a chair. Coffee? Or tea, if you're feeling delicate. I'll stand, Jinx said, ignoring the offer. The League insists you deactivate this vessel immediately, for the safety of all dock inhabitants. Eli leaned forward. Funny, nobody worried about safety when it was a pile of scrap. Jinx's feathers bristled. Its history is complicated. Entire fleets vanished under its guns. You cannot possibly expect. Grant's voice cut in, still calm. History's just the part where we remember who blinked first. He smiled faintly. And I have no plans to blink. The ambassador's gaze hardened. Defiance will be noted in the League's records. Grant leaned back. Good. Make sure you spell my name right. Grant Mercer. 2 E's. Not like last time. Jinx's eyes narrowed. There was a last time? He turned sharply and left, Zill scurrying after him. Eli grinned. You just threatened an ambassador. Not threatened, Grant said. Clarified. An hour later, the first real provocation arrived. A message pinged from dock control. League security teams will be boarding the Antaris for inspection. Eli read it twice. They're coming here? With guns. Grant shrugged. Then we'll give them a tour. The inspection team arrived in full armor, 6 Crenari soldiers with pulse rifles. Grant met them in the airlock with a practiced smile. Welcome aboard, he said. Follow me. They swept through the corridors, scanning bulkheads and peering into compartments. Grant led them toward the aft section, and then the hatches sealed behind them with a hiss. AI, Grant said. Initiate training simulation. The lighting shifted to red. Sirens blared. The deck shuddered as simulated impacts rippled through the hull. The soldiers snapped their rifles up instinctively. A voice boomed from hidden speakers. Hull breach detected. Hostile boarders eliminated in 10 seconds. Panic flickered in their eyes. The simulation ended just before the countdown reached 0. The hatches opened, releasing them back into the corridor. Grant's tone never changed. See? Perfectly safe. They left without speaking, but the tension in their shoulders spoke volumes. Later, Eli found his father in the mess, pouring coffee. That was deliberate. Everything's deliberate, Grant said. Now half the dock will hear that the Antaris can kill boarders in under a minute. Saves me having to say it. By mid-afternoon, more ships had joined the watchers outside, some flying neutral flags, others showing no ID at all. A few were close enough to make the station's security uneasy. The comm chimed. Unidentified vessel locking targeting systems. Eli stiffened. They're aiming at us? Grant's voice was almost cheerful. Eli, would you like to light the candles? Eli hesitated, then nodded. Grant keyed the command. The Antaris' forward plating shifted aside with a grinding of massive servos. From beneath, ancient cannons unfolded, each barrel the size of a commuter tram. Power surged through the conduits, humming deep enough to rattle teeth. Outside, the targeting ship adjusted course, but too late. One pulse from the main gun tore through space, enveloping its shields in white light. When it cleared, the vessel was nothing but drifting fragments. The docks went dead silent. Eli swallowed. One shot. Grant looked out at the debris. Cheaper that way. The comm buzzed again, Zill's voice, this time pitched an octave higher. Captain Mercer, dock control requests you refrain from further demonstrations. Of course, Grant said pleasantly. Wouldn't want to scare the neighbors. When the channel closed, Eli leaned on the console. They're going to come after us, aren't they? Grant's smile was thin. That's the point. The rust bucket, as every alien dockworker in the sector called it, had no right to sound like that. A deep, rolling thrum that rattled teeth and made the deck plates feel suddenly alive. On the viewing gallery above Bay 6, A dozen alien dignitaries stood frozen mid-insult. Hours earlier, they had been mocking Commander Harris and his son as salvage scavengers, who'd inherited a worthless Terran relic. Now, their ridiculing smirks had died into tight-lipped stares. "Dad," Eli murmured from the pilot's chair, eyes flicking over sensor readouts, "we have full core ignition. Systems are, online in a way I've never seen before." Harris leaned over, voice steady but sharp. "That's because this ship isn't running on any engine you've flown before. Keep your hands steady. And remember what I said, never smile too soon." From the comm speakers, Dockmaster Trask's voice cracked like breaking ice. "Human vessel, power down immediately. You're triggering security fields." Harris's reply was polite enough to be mistaken for compliance. "Security fields? Oh, I think you mean those short-range particle projectors wired into your hull supports. Cute toys. You might want to check their capacitor integrity. Dock schematics suggest they've been neglected." The dockmaster didn't answer. Somewhere in the gallery, someone began whispering in an alien language that made the air feel colder. When the rust bucket shifted in her clamps, the sound was like a sleeping predator stretching after a long hibernation. Metal groaning, bolts straining, energy coursing through ancient arteries. Eli tapped a flashing icon. "Dad, there's something hidden in the databanks. Multiple encrypted layers. Looks military." "Not looks. Is," Harris said, still calm. "And here's the thing they don't know. This ship isn't a war relic. She's a contingency." The comm crackled again, this time with the smooth voice of Ambassador Varish of the Karen hierarchy. "Commander Harris, you've made your demonstration. Power down and step away from the console. We don't wish to escalate." Harris smiled faintly. "See, that's where humans and the hierarchy always misunderstand each other. You call this escalation. We call this starting position." A deep bass hum resonated through the bay. Hollow projections flared up along the rust bucket's hull, faint at first, then sharpening into an unmistakable form. Terran military insignia, long thought extinct, overlaid with a single phrase: "Authorized activation, Orpheus Protocol." The gallery erupted in alien chatter. One elder, scaled and regal, took a step back as if the words themselves carried heat. Varish's tone wavered. "Impossible. The Orpheus fleet was dismantled." "Oh sure," Harris replied. "We filed the paperwork, scrapped the shells, melted the frames. You know, standard PR cleanup. But what happens when you design a fleet that can't really be destroyed?" The bay lights flickered. Eli's console lit with hundreds of handshake requests, other ships pinging them from beyond the system's edge. Each signal carried the same code. Each was answered. The docking clamps disengaged with a heavy clunk. "Dad, there are 20 ships on approach. Not civilian. Not local registry. Keep your voice steady, son. That's just the welcoming committee." Harris flicked the comms to a secure Terran channel. "Orpheus wing. Status." A chorus of human voices replied in unison, standing by for command authorization. The gallery above was in chaos now. Guards fumbled for weapons. A few tried to leave, only to find the doors sealed. Harris noticed, but didn't mention it. "Let them stew." Varish's composure cracked. "You've violated neutrality agreements. This is an act of war." Harris's voice sharpened, just slightly. An act of war would have been showing up with guns blazing. This is different. This is showing up with a rusting old warship in plain sight, letting you all laugh at us, and waiting for the right moment to stop smiling. He stood from the co-pilot seat, letting his shadow stretch across the deck. "And that moment," he added, "is now." The rust bucket shields flared to life, not the flickering blue bubbles the aliens were used to, but a shimmering aurora, bending light around the hull. Sensor readings spiked off the charts. Eli turned, eyes wide. "Dad, these aren't defensive shields. They're..." "Correct. They're event horizon projectors. If someone fires at us, the projectile won't hit, it won't even exist anymore." An alarm blared on the alien side of the comlink. Ships in orbit were scrambling to arm themselves. Too late. Harris keyed the final command. Across the bay, the rust bucket's ancient plating shifted, revealing sleek, obsidian armor beneath, a predator shedding its disguise. Eli's voice was barely a whisper. This was the plan the whole time, wasn't it? Son, when someone mocks you for inheriting junk, you don't argue. You let them underestimate you long enough for the trap to close. The alien dignitaries pounded on the sealed gallery doors. One shouted a demand for surrender. Harris didn't bother replying. Instead, he opened a channel to every ship within range, his voice calm and measured. This is Commander Harris of the Terran Navy. Effective immediately, Dock 6 and all attached sectors are under Terran protective custody. Any resistance will be interpreted as hostility. And if you're wondering whether we have the means to enforce that, keep wondering. The 20 approaching ships emerged from hyperspace, sliding into formation around the station like wolves around wounded prey. Every one of them bore the same insignia. Varish's final attempt at diplomacy came out more like a plea. Why? Why bring this here? We had peace. Harris's smile was thin. Peace is a lovely thing. But here's the truth. Peace only works when everyone believes you're willing to end it. He glanced at Eli. Take us out. The rust bucket glided free of the dock, flanked by the Orpheus wing. Behind them, the station's defenses powered down, not by choice, but because the humans had already rewritten the control codes. As they cleared the bay, Eli let out a slow breath. So, what happens now? Now, Harris said, we see who's smart enough to stay quiet, and who needs a reminder of why humans are the species you don't corner.